Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is in David and Goliath, D&G Part 2. We are still in Kyrgyzstan. Today we have Lubimy Peach Nectar. Okay, now on the previous video, Part 1, we were talking about how there are antitypes in the Old Testament. Okay, and Yeshua Jesus has these prefigures, right? Adam, Yitzhak, Isaac, Joseph, Boaz, and King David are types of Yeshua, Moses being the ultimate. And there are also antitypes for the Antichrist, which is, you find all through the Bible, this Antichrist character or spirit. Revelation 13, we had said, has a lot of descriptions of him. Okay, and in Part 1 we covered, there's the 666, there was the bear, lion, and beast theme. Who wages war with him? There's the dragon. Remember, Goliath was in these fish-scaled armor. Okay, so we're going to continue where we left off, maybe a verse or two before, and we're in 1 Samuel chapter 17, and verse 37. David has been, he offered to go and fight Goliath, this Philistine, and Saul was kind of doubting that he was just a youth and would not be able to do this, and David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Then Saul clothed David with his garments and put a bronze helmet on his head, and he clothed him with armor. Verse 39, David girded his sword over his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. So David said to Saul, "I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them." And David took them off. Verse 40. So he, David, took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in his shepherd's bag, which he had, even in his pouch, and his sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. Wow, lots packed in that verse. First of all, he picked for himself 5 smooth stones. That word for stones there is ebenim. And that's plural. Notice it ends in yud mem, I-M. If you have just one stone, the word is eben, aleph, bet, nun. And what do we know about aleph, bet, nun? Stone. The word stone is made up of 2 Hebrew words combined. It's the word father, Abba, and the word son, Ben. And you put them together and you make a stone, Eben. I remember the stone that the builders rejected became the chief cornerstone. That's a description of the Messiah. And it's just a nice description of the oneness of the Father and the Son. They are like a stone. You can't separate one from the other. Beautiful picture. I love it. Okay, so Eben, stone. And he picked up 5 stones. Well, you know what? He's going to battle against this Philistine, Goliath. Remember Goliath back in 1 Samuel 17:4, it says he had a bronze helmet on his head and he was clothed with scale armor which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. So you got 5,000 shekels of bronze going against 5 smooth stones from the brook. I mean, this is like the most mismatched battle that's coming. But, of course, David has God to help out. And 5, if you remember, 5, it's the 5th letter, hey. And whenever we see hey, remember, behold, a revelation, something's going to be revealed, something big blessing is coming, okay? And all through the Bible we have examples of this. Matthew 9:16. Do you not yet remember or understand or remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000 and how many baskets full you picked up? I mean, if you just go into that verse with, hey, look, he had 5 loaves. Wow, hey, 5. Something big is going to be revealed. It's all through the Bible. And God has given us these blessings in 5s. We have 5 senses, right? We have 5 fingers. Very nice, right? And remember there were 5 people in the Bible who, at the 5th mention of their name, the verse says they found favor. And David happens to be one of them. 1 Samuel 16:22, Saul said to Jesse, saying, let David now stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight. That is the 5th mention of David's name in the Bible. The Torah, 5 books in the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim. And this Torah, by the way, this is what gives us the law. Okay, and in 2 Corinthians 3:7, it describes the law as, verse 7, but if the ministry of death in letters engraved on stone came with glory, so that the sons of Israel could not look intently at the face of Moses because of the glory of his face, fading as it was, on and on, but the letters engraved on stone, these are the tablets, this is the law. And Paul here is referring to that as a ministry of death. Letters engraved on stones is the ministry of death. Remember, it's by grace you are saved through faith, not the law. So, Goliath is about to learn the hard way that mocking and taunting the God of Israel is going to be his ministry of death. The law brings death. You know another reason David picked up 5 stones? Look at this. In 2 Samuel 21, starting in verse 15. This is after the whole David and Goliath story. It says, now when the Philistines were at war again with Israel, David went down and his servants with him. And as they fought against the Philistines, David became weary. Then Ishbi-benob, who was among the descendants of the giant, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels of bronze in weight, was girded with a new sword, and he intended to kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, helped him and struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, you shall not go out again with us to battle, so that you do not extinguish the lamp of Israel. Very nice that his men are concerned about David. Listen, don't you be going to battle anymore. We don't want to lose you, the lamp of Israel. But who is this Ishbi-benob, one of the descendants of the giant? This is not Goliath. This is a different giant, okay? In 2 Samuel 21:16, here are a couple different translations. It says, Ishbi-benob was a descendant of the giants, from the English Standard Version, the New American Standard. Even the King James talks about which was one of the sons of the giant. Well, who's this giant they're talking about? Well, if you go back to the original Hebrew and the New International Version, the NIV, which I usually like to bash, but they got it right on this one. The Berean Study Bible got it right. Then Ishbi-benob, a descendant of Rapha. Who's Rapha? Okay? But anyway, that's what the original Hebrew says, not giants. And Rapha, this is the proper name of inhabitants of an area east of the Jordan. Okay? So we got this giant descendant from Rapha, whoever he is, and David ended up killing him. In 2 Samuel 21:18, now it came about after this that there was war again with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai, the Hushathite, struck down Saph, who was among the descendants of the giant. Saph. Who's he? I don't know, another giant guy. 2 Samuel 21:19. There was war with the Philistines again at Gob, and Elhanan, the son of Yair-Uragim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Well, here's another giant. This is not Ishbi-Benob. This is not Saph. This is a guy named Lami. How do we know that? Because 1 Chronicles 25 retells that same story. Look, and there was war with the Philistines again. And Elhanan, the son of Yair, killer of Lami, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. They're telling the same story here, but here they're giving his name, Lami. And he was a descendant of these giants. Look at 2 Samuel 21:20, starting. There was war at Gath again, and there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. And he also had been born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, struck him down. So here's a different guy. This isn't one of those Lami or Saph or Ishbi-Benob. He doesn't have a name, but he's the man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. And in 2 Samuel 21:22, it says, because it's just described all 4 of these guys, these 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. There they are, all 4 of them. And if you look at the different translations, the New Living, the English Standard, the New American, and the King James, they all talk about these 4 were descendant from the giants in Gath. But the original says they were descendants of Rapha in Gath. So, there you go. And by the way, these 4 that were born to Rapha in Gath, let's add those to Goliath of Gath. Now you have 5. And David took out all 5 of them. So when David approached the Philistine, I always wondered, why did he pick up 5 stones? If he had so much faith in God, you'd pick up 1 stone. Now I think David was thinking ahead. This is Goliath, you're just the first of 5. Nice picture. What a great story there. And here's, again, 1 Chronicles 20:18 talks about descendant from the giants in the different versions, okay? Yet, the New International and the Berean Study Bible translated it correctly. Points for them. Okay, so he took his staff in his hand and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook. Whenever Goliath and David, when you picture this fight that's about to go on, you think it's probably very one-sided, right? David's just a teenager, Goliath is 9 feet tall and got all this armor, and we don't think about, David has the advantage. Not only because he has God, but Goliath, there's something different about Goliath. He's got this disease or whatever it is that makes him just huge, right? There's a term for it, gigantism, okay? And there's a medical, you can look it up here. It's gigantism is this. Macroadenomas are large pituitary tumors. Large tumors can compress surrounding structures, primarily the normal pituitary gland and optic pathways, causing symptoms. So when you have this, whatever you have that makes you extra big, it causes extra problems, okay? And some of these macroadenomas can cause vision loss. When the macroadenoma grow upward into the brain cavity. They compress against the optic chiasm. Okay, so it makes you have vision loss. It also causes peripheral vision loss, where one can only see directly in front of them. It also causes blurry vision. These macroadenomas grow forward and compress against the optic nerve and make things blurry. And colors are not perceived as bright as usual. So, you know, Goliath, imagine he has, well, you don't imagine, he's got gigantism, and he could have all of these symptoms. And so his vision is a little blurry. He can't see what's coming from the side. His vision is going out, and it's blurry. And, you know, it really is not a fair fight. He's got vision problems, and that's a huge disadvantage. All right. 1 Samuel 17:40. We already read this one. He took his staff in hand and chose 5 stones. 41 says, then the Philistine came on and approached David with the shield bearer in front of him. You know what? This is the second mention of the shield bearer. And we said if Goliath is this massive guy, his shield is a massive shield, and his shield bearer must be a pretty massive guy, right, to carry this thing. So who is this shield bearer, and how does he apply? Remember, Goliath is a type of Antichrist, right? So let's go look at Revelation 13, starting in verse 11. And it says, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. And he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of the heaven to the earth in the presence of men. So we have this Antichrist, and now we have this other beast who goes before the Antichrist, propping him up and pointing to him, okay? Verse 14, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given to him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who has the wound of the sword and has come to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Verse 16, and he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, you know that? They're talking about, in Europe, I know they have chips in all the farm animals. It's not going to be long until they're going to start suggesting we need to start chipping people, right? You hear about it now. You can have your credit card information and your passport information and just put it all into a little chip, and you just wave your hand over some kind of a little reader, right? And it can keep track of you, and it's coming. It's this. Revelation 13, 18. It's the beginning of it. So we have this Antichrist, and we have this false prophet who goes before him. And of course, both of them are under Satan, and the three of them form an unholy trinity. Remember, Satan doesn't do anything on his own. Satan always copies God. Satan's not original. So God has this perfect, beautiful, we don't want to call it a trinity. What do we call it? We call it the complex unity, right? Well, Satan copies this with his unholy trinity of Satan, Antichrist, and false prophet. And I think that this shield bearer is the type of the false prophet. There you go. Revelation 20, verse 8. And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are also. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. All right! But here you have the whole unholy trinity in one verse, right? You got the devil, you got Antichrist, and false prophet. So in our triangle, we can look at, we have another beast coming up out of the earth. That's the shield bearer representing false prophet. Nice. Now all these are, you can see. And by the way, not every one of these is going to match up. Just like Joseph has a lot of parallels to Jesus, but he doesn't have everyone. If he had every parallel, he'd be the Messiah, right? And Goliath is not going to have every parallel to the Antichrist, or he would be the Antichrist. Okay, 1 Samuel 17:42. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy, with a handsome appearance. You know, here David is just this young kid, right? But he ends up becoming Israel's biggest, greatest king. Smallest son of Jesse becomes Israel's biggest king. That is the same as, just look at the word Israel. Israel starts with a tiny little yod and it ends with the big lamed. Just the name of Israel shows it's going to be great. Okay, 1 Samuel 17:43. The Philistines said to David, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine also said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field." Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." This "whom you have defied," we saw this way back at the beginning of the story in part 1, right? 1 Samuel 17:10. Again the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." And at the end of 26, for who is this uncircumcised Philistine that they should defy the armies of the living Elohim? So we've got blasphemous words. The Antichrist speaks them, it says in Revelation 13, and we have Goliath speaking them. Another parallel here. Blasphemous words. Okay, Samuel 17:46. This day Yahweh will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you. And I will give the carcasses of the army of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the creatures of the earth, that all the earth will know that there is an Elohim in Israel. And all those assembled here will know that Yahweh does not deliver by sword or spear, for the battle is Yahweh's, and he will give all of you into our hands. Then it happened, when the Philistine rose and came and drew near to meet David, that David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. Wow! It's getting exciting. Way to go, David. He's not running from the fight. He's running into the fight. I love it. 1 Samuel 17:49. Then David reached into his bag and took out a stone and slung it, striking the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. Okay. You know, this is interesting. He's Goliath. Boom! Face down on the ground. Let's go back to Genesis 3:19. This snake, serpent, Satan, he's deceived these people into eating the forbidden fruit. And afterward, God is doling out curses and punishments, okay? The snake gets cursed, and the woman gets cursed. The man actually doesn't get cursed. In 3:19 it says, by the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. God actually curses the ground, and then man's going to have to till the ground. But there was no curse given to man. But we were dust, because he formed us from the dust, and to the dust we will return. And in Genesis 3:14, whenever God is cursing the serpent, it says, and Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, to the Nachosh, because you have done this, cursed are you more than all cattle, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. So the serpent is going to eat dust. And in 1 Samuel 17:49, Goliath, boom, face down. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. Goliath, eat dust. He's the serpent, Satan, Antichrist figure. Boom, eat dust. Love it. Okay, and, you know, this stone hits him in the head and knocks him down. And maybe kills him. We're not sure here right now. But Goliath is receiving a fatal head wound. And look at Revelation 13:3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. So this Antichrist, he's going to receive a mortal head wound, just as Goliath did. Another parallel on our triangle, head wound. Nice. Verse 50. Thus David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and he struck the Philistine and killed him, but there was no sword in David's hand. Now why I mentioned earlier is, did he kill him with the stone? It says here, and he struck the Philistine and killed him. Okay? Then go to verse 51, and it says, then David ran and stood over the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of its sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. I don't know whether the stone killed him in verse 50 or in verse 51, he took the sword, drew it out, and killed him. It's kind of ambiguous there. Which verse killed him? Was it the stone or his sword? But he did cut off his head with it. Okay? And there's a nice type parallel here, because David is a type of Christ. And he slew Goliath with a sword. And if you go to Revelation 19, verse 15 and 21, it says, from his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God, the Almighty. And the rest were killed with that sword, which came out of the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. This is talking about Yeshua, right? He's going to defeat his enemies with the sword that comes out of his mouth, and David used the sword to defeat his enemy. Verse 52, the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the slain Philistines lay along the way to Sha'araim, even to Gath and Ekron. The sons of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines and plundered their camps. Verse 54, and David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his weapons in his tent. Verse 55, now when Saul saw David going out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, Abner, whose son is this young man? And Abner said, by your life, O king, I do not know. The king said, you inquire whose son the youth is. So when David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with the Philistine's head in his hand. Saul said to him, "Whose son are you, young man?" And David answered, "I am the son of your servant Jesse, Isai, the Bethlehemite." Okay, that wraps up 1 Samuel 17. And you can see all these parallels between Goliath and Antichrist. And David, he's got parallels with the Christ, the Messiah, right? The son of David. So we're going to wind it up there. Thanks for watching. God bless. To God be the glory. To God be the honor. To God be the praise. We will see you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. You know, go back to 1 Samuel 17:54. It says, "And David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his weapons in his tent." From where this battle took place, back to Jerusalem is 20 miles. Okay? And it says David took the Philistine's head. Remember, he brought it when he went before Saul, he was carrying this head. And if this guy is 9 feet tall, his head is a big head, right? And all of his weapons. So when he gets back to Jerusalem, what does David do with a big dead head? He's not going to put it in the tent with the weapons, because in a day or two it's going to start stinking. And he can't take it into the old city of Jerusalem, because there's all kind of laws about death, and you can't touch a dead body or you become unclean, and God doesn't want a dead head brought into his holy city. So where does David put the head? It doesn't say. Does he bury it somewhere? He could, you know. I have a suspicion as to where he put it. You know, there is a place in Jerusalem, and it's just outside of the old city. In fact, it's on the east side of Jerusalem, just up the road from the Damascus Gate. And you cross the street, and there is a bus terminal. It's kind of the Palestinian bus terminal. If you want to take a bus to Ramallah or to Jericho, this is where you'd catch the bus. There's another bus station on the other side, the Israeli side, and it's all Israeli, but you understand, the Jewish side. And those buses go to parts of Israel where the Jews are. So this bus station, okay, there's all these buses parked in a big parking lot, and behind the bus station there is this outcropping of rock, okay, and it looks like a skull. And down inside of this big rock outcropping, there's all kind of caves and tunnels. And I think that maybe David put it in one of those caves. This is my suspicion, behind this rock outcropping. This rock has a name. It's called Golgotha. Perhaps you've heard of it, okay? Which, if you go back to Judges chapter 9, verse 53, it says, "A certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head, crushing his skull." The Hebrew word for skull is Goliath. There it is, okay? Well, that's interesting, okay? Because this big rock outcropping is called Golgotha, the place of the skull. And here's a picture of me, I think it's back in 2008 maybe. And you can kind of see, you can see some buses parked on the bottom right there. And it kind of looks skull-like. Let me take another picture. Here's one. You can see sunken eyes, You can see a sunken nose and where the mouth will be. It looks like a skull. Okay? And this, my friends, is just across the street from the ancient holy city. And we know from the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, Matthew 27:33 says, and when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull, and Mark 15:22 says, then they brought him, Yeshua, to the place Golgotha, which is translated place of a skull. And Luke 23:33, when they came to the place called the skull, there they crucified him and the criminals. And in John 19:17, they took Yeshua, therefore, and he went out, bearing his own cross, to the place called the place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha. This is where Yeshua Jesus was crucified, on top of this place of the skull. And it looks like a skull. And in Hebrew, the Hebrew word name is Goliath, which is skull. You know, I have a very dear friend named Reuben. I met him in the United States. He was Jewish. And he's the one who told me, you want to show me Jesus? You show me Jesus in the Old Testament, in the Torah, in Hebrew. He told me this many years ago. And it's what inspired me to learn Hebrew and to dig all that I dig so I could show him. And Reuben eventually moved back to Israel after 22 years in America. And I went and visited him often. He just died this week, and it's extremely sad. But I had the great blessing of meeting with Reuben in Jerusalem. And I took him to the bus station. Jews don't go to that side of town. Jews don't go to that bus station. And we walked back to where the buses are parked. And he looked at this rock outcropping and he said, what do you call this? And I said, Reuben, it's called Golgotha. And he just stopped in his tracks and he said, the Hebrew word for head bone is Goliath. It's like the light went off, that Jesus was crucified on top of that hill. And you know what? Jews never go to that side of town. Jews would not go to that bus station. It's right there. It's right there. But they don't go and see it. Look at this picture. If any Jews are watching, there it is. Golgotha, the place of the skull. It's in your holy city, Jerusalem. And Yeshua is crucified on top of that. Anyway, I think David put Goliath of Gath's head bone, his Goliath, in Golgotha. And I think the name is just very clever how God calls the Hebrew word for skull Goliath. And the place where Jesus is crucified is the place of the skull, Golgotha. And when people say it's the place of the skull, whose skull? It's Goliath of Gath's skull is in there. Goliath of Gath. Goliath of Gath. Golgotha. And when Jesus was hanging on the cross and his blood is dripping down on this place of the skull, this fulfills one of the fulfilling of Genesis 3:15, the proto-evangelium, the first gospel. Because it says, he will crush your head and you will bruise his heel. Jesus' heel was bruised on top of that when they nailed him to the cross. And when Jesus' precious, innocent, holy blood dripped down and hit the top of that skull hill, Satan's head was crushed. God bless. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye. Wait, we have another little bonus. You know, if you look in the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 2, it talks about Ruth, her in-laws. And it says, the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi. And the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem in Judah. And now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. Okay, so why are we bringing up Ruth in this story? Okay, well, these two boys, they married two Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. Okay, and then the two boys died. So Ruth decides to go with Naomi back to Israel. Orpah does not want to go back. And Orpah, her name is spelled Ayin Resh Pei Hey. Orpah, by the way, it references neck. Okay, the oref is the word for neck in Hebrew, stiff neck. You see it in Exodus 33:5, and the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the sons of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people." Okay, so again, how is Orpah related to any of this? Well, in our talk about Goliath, remember he had 4 brothers. And in 2 Samuel 21:22, it says, these 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. We read this earlier, okay? And remember, it says they were born to the giant in Gath. That word giant is not giant. That word in Hebrew is Rapha. Okay, remember Ishbi-Benob, who is descendant of the giant, who is descendant of the Rapha. And they struck down Saph, who is a descendant of the Rapha. Well, that word Rapha has the same 3 letters as Orpah's name. Okay, and Jews in the Talmud, which I don't read the Talmud, I stick with Torah and Tanakh, but in the Talmud, they believe that Goliath and his 4 brothers were descendants, or they were the children of Orpah. That's interesting. Now, we have no biblical proof of that, but it is Jewish lore, and I thought you might like to know that, that Goliath's mother, there's a good chance, is Orpah. Okay, there's your extra super bonus. God bless. See you soon. Bye-bye.